Okay, so tonight we're back at the readings, and Ajahn Yaniko has asked that we now will start to go down the line, so all the monks will choose a reading and we'll just one at a time go down. Pick a reading within the Thai Forest tradition, keep up with the theme of kind of traditional practices that we've been focusing on. So tonight I'm going to have a go at reading from Seeing with the Eye of Dhamma, the comprehensive teaching of Buddhadasa Bhikkhu. This book came out fairly recently, and I found it inspiring in his approach to Dhamma and the way he explains things. The chapter I'm reading is chapter 6, How Superstition Influences Mental Cultivation. Dhamma is a matter of the psychological more than the physical, of mind more than body. It is a matter of inner truth. Consequently, mental cultivation consists of training mind to the highest level, where the most profound truths are realized. To do so properly, we follow the principles of the Pali text, which is Buddhology, the science of awakening. Nevertheless, there is always the possibility of going astray into superstition, sleepology, the science of lying down on the job, which is governed by confused views and misguided thinking. With superstition, understanding of mind and of path, fruit, and nibbana is insufficient and incorrect. This is Sayasatra, Buddhism confused by superstition as opposed to Buddhasastra, or true Buddhology. Cultivation dictated by superstitious wrong view, miccaditthi, creates misguided, unnatural development. The many and various forms of wrong view emanate from a faulty understanding of mind and lack of skillful cultivation. When citta bhavana is correct and natural, it is Buddhology. When foolishness obscures the nature of mind, citta bhavana is tainted by Sayasatra, the science of lying down on the job, sleepology. Foolish understanding of things is the reason why superstitious belief outweighs genuine Buddhism. It's why human development, both personal and collective, goes astray. Consider superstitious fears of the unseen and unknown. How much are people afraid of mysterious and supernatural things? Comparatively, how much fear is there of tangible things, such as harmful wrongdoing? Isn't it foolish to fear things we can't see while having little fear of doing obviously bad things and generating bad karma that causes trouble? When sleepology dominates, we don't progress in Dhamma life. This problem has befallen many Buddhists, denying them adequate space for confidence, observation, contemplation, and insight. In that condition, our understanding remains crude and uneven, and we are Buddhists in name only. An example of superstitious Buddhists are those who believe in bad omens. There are Thai Buddhists who become anxious when hearing the greeting of a jingjok, small house lizard, which they interpret as an evil portent. On a day they encounter a jingjok, they won't do anything because they believe something bad is going to happen to them. They fear they will encounter misfortune or even die. Sometimes things fall unexpectedly, and they take it as an omen that something bad is on the way. Do any of us harbor such beliefs in bad omens? There is a senior royal Thai governor lawyer with an important case against the French concerning Khao Phra Rihan on the Cambodian border. On the day the verdict was to be heard, as he was about to leave to go to the court, a picture fell from the wall and broke into pieces, with the frame and glass shattering. He was terrified. He took it as a sign that he would lose the case and would be disgraced. Sure enough, he lost, and the land was given to the French colonialists. For the rest of his life, he believed that the fallen picture caused the loss of the case. He never considered that it was a coincidence or that the judges had decided even before he woke up that day. Thinking in such ways keeps us from being thoroughgoing Buddhists, yet it is common. We ought to do something to clear this up, so that our Buddhism is reasonable and based in actual conditions and their consequences. Sleepology is powerful because it comes from a deeply ingrained and habitual ignorance passed along through our ancestry. Intelligence, mindfulness, and wisdom haven't received the same degree of attention, nor been passed on through generations to the same extent. Further, we must admit that some superstition is a necessary springboard for people to begin to practice as they ought to. They aren't ready to believe the true wisdom teachings, so they need to be inspired with presentations that fit the belief systems acquired from their ancestors. If something isn't couched in superstitious and fearful terms, it won't catch the attention of most people. For instance, if we warn children about trying to catch water coming out of the gutter pipe because lightning will strike there, they will probably believe what we say and act accordingly. Whereas if we simply explain that the bowl is easily broken that way, they won't think it important or scary. As long as foolishness pervades humanity, many things will need to be couched in fear-inducing superstitious terms. Mysterious, awe-inspiring explanations, charismatic presenters, and sacred terminology typically have a better chance of encouraging more useful and beneficial forms of behavior. Direct explanations of what is most beneficial won't convince people still influenced by sleepology. Ignorance and fear keep superstition alive. We all harbor fears, particularly fear of death. If someone promised to save us from death, many of us would happily jump on that without much consideration. This fear makes it easier for us to accept Sayasastra. Sleepology accumulates around worldly people who let foolish beliefs and fears run the show. These two together, foolishness and fear, give birth to superstition. The forests of southern Thailand provide an interesting example of Sayasatra as not always a bad thing. The high-quality timber trees, such as ironwood, are believed to house spirits. Not wanting to risk death by offending a spirit, people were afraid to cut down those trees. We used to have lots of ironwood trees around here, but they've disappeared since people stopped believing the old superstitions. This example makes it hard to say whether sleepology is good or bad. If applied wisely, it can be good. Since we can't yet live without superstitions, we need to improve them for the good and to pave the way for the ultimate good. Sleepology can be used to lead people to the right path by identifying a sleepological belief that can be connected to something important for their development. This may be necessary for them to get started. Afterwards, they can continue more wisely. In the case of the psycho-spiritual training, a superstitious belief, such as in magic powers, can be used to get people to train their minds. Such beliefs, when their believer is convinced something is real, can inspire weak-minded people with the mental strength and confidence to practice. Also, observe how children who have fallen down can be charmed by a magic formula to stop crying. It provides emotional strength, and they forget they're hurt. In short, Sayasatra is still needed for those not yet ready for Buddhasastra, such as children and those lacking in Dhamma understanding. Sleepology is comparable to pain-relieving medicine. When we have a headache or toothache that is hard to bear, we take medicine to manage the symptoms. However, such medicine doesn't cure the disease. To do that, we must go to the source of the pain. After taking a pain reliever, we can deal with the underlying disease itself. Unfortunately, some people get stuck on the medicine of superstition and quick fixes, and they stay stuck throughout their lives, so they never discover the real truth of Dhamma. Once we are truly ready for Buddhasastra, we won't need the Sayasastra anymore. Buddhology and superstition. Because Buddhology and sleepology are intertwined, we need to study them together to grasp them properly. The Pali word saya can mean better than. From this angle, superstitious knowledge can be considered better than knowing nothing at all. Think back to our forest-dwelling ancestors, some of whom had knowledge of matters that ordinary people didn't. Hence they became the leaders and guides for the rest to learn the same things. As this satisfied the recipients, such knowledge was accepted as better than knowing nothing at all. Superstition, in this sense, has the meaning of better knowledge than knowing nothing, even if such knowledge isn't complete. Saya can also mean asleep. contrasted with Buddha, meaning awake. Asleep, in this instance, refers to the sort of knowledge that, while good enough for solving trivial problems, isn't awakened to deeper truths needed to solve spiritual problems. As with taking medicine to get rid of pain, having enough knowledge to take the medicine is better than not having any knowledge. Yet if that's as far as one goes, that sort of knowledge won't be enough to remedy the causes of disease that cause the pain to begin with. Sleepy knowledge can be useful until one knows what's what and how things work, which is to be awake. Awakening from the sleep of ignorance is referred to as Buddhology. This involves waking up to the basic law of nature, especially idappaccayata, the law of conditionality that governs inner and outer natures, both physical and mental. Seeing the relationships among causes and effects in line with idappaccayata, we can solve our problems. Thus, awakening science replaces the sleeping science. People realize Buddhology personally through sufficient training and practice. At present, however, from childhood onward, people are taught to be superstitiously inclined. Since emerging from the womb, children are taught various superstitions and are needlessly afraid of things. For instance, children are told that if they don't stop crying, a gecko will come and eat their liver, or the boogeyman will get them. Such things are akin to the ABCs of superstitious belief. Children acquire sleepology in abundance, and it stays with them throughout their teens and into adulthood. They are taught to believe without reasoning regarding things in which causes and consequences can be seen. Hence, foolish belief expands in ever-widening circles. When a superstition corresponds with something one desires, such as washing one's face with sacred water to be beautiful, it is eagerly seized upon. Charms, love potions, and sacred mantras are much in evidence among people who haven't received a proper Dhamma education. Even people living in developed cities and countries will be dominated by superstitions if they don't have the opportunity to study and practice Dhamma properly. In Bangkok, where there's so little opportunity to study Dhamma properly, superstition dominates. There's more sleepology than Buddhology in the developed city. An obvious example is those guardian spirit houses that were once hard to find even in the countryside. They're all over Bangkok now, so much that they're overflowing back into the countryside. Please don't think there's no superstition in modern cities. In such places, people will, if anything, be more superstitiously inclined. This is because development for them consists in getting more and more. They have desires, more desires, and extreme desires. When someone tells them that acting in such and such a way will fulfill their desires, they seize on that with alacrity. People tend to fall easily into sleepology. Those who don't want excessively won't be nearly as superstitious. Those who never want anything more than is necessary, such as arahants, aren't superstitious at all. Superstition blocks spiritual nobility. If superstitious belief isn't abandoned, there's no way to reach spiritual nobility. The first level of nobility requires leaving superstitious beliefs behind. Dhamma students know that personality view, Sakkayaditthi, doubts, Vicikicca, and caressing of precepts and rituals, Silappattaparamasa, are given up for stream entry, Sottapatti. Believing one is a coherent, independent personality is the basis of all superstitions. Believing one is a coherent, independent personality is the basis of all superstitions. Being in doubt is an inherent component of beliefs that haven't been carefully examined. Foolish misuse of precepts, rituals, and duties can turn any practice into superstitious behavior. Superstition is even further left behind by the higher levels of spiritual nobility. Sakkayaditthi is the initial ignorance that this body is me. This is the crudest of all atta, self. It has stuck to us since childhood and takes up a lot of space. The belief that this body is me is the first superstition to be abandoned. Vicikicca, doubt, not knowing how to respond when faced with an experience and confused thinking about it, is superstitious too. And there is Silabhata Paramasa, superstitious understanding of precepts, vows, and spiritual duties, which manifests when people practice religious observances without understanding the true reasons for them. Rituals are superstitious when not in line with, or even opposed to, their original purpose. A common example is keeping precepts for the sake of worldly profit or benefit rather than their purpose of overcoming the corruptions. Perhaps you've heard of purifying yourself, washing away your sins by going to the temple or a holy place. Nobody knows how this actually works, but many believe in it. Though rather odd, it's still somewhat of a good thing. Even though one might go to such places for superstitious reasons, not really understanding what the temple is for, at least one would go, which is better than not going at all. In going, many, many times, people can slowly begin to understand the purpose of the temple and what one is meant to do there. This can be a start to understanding Dhamma. What started as a superstitious ritual gradually found the proper path. Be aware that almost everything in the lives of ordinary worldly people will be interfered with in some way by the superstitious beliefs buried deep in their minds. The standard acts of Buddhism, doing good, making donations, helping, living simply, mostly fall under the umbrella of superstitious belief, because it's easier to involve people in such activities through superstition than straightforward explanations. Our ancient ancestors, going back to when they still lived in forests, ordered their lives in thousands of superstitious ways. Taboos were created that instilled fear, such that nobody dared break them down. Explanations weren't needed, just fear. With such taboos, questioning wasn't encouraged. Belief is all that was required. Our ancestors organized their communities with such powerful methods, and many of these superstitions are still with us today. However, we Buddhists should ask ourselves whether such methods are appropriate for those who honor and take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. How can we put our faith in karma and the law of idappaccayata if we're still superstitiously inclined? Please recognize this as an important issue, one we need to think about clearly if we're to have a cleaner, purer, more genuine Buddhist community. Comparing awake and sleeping. What does this have to do with citta bhavana? Misguided mental cultivation tends to promote superstition. Displaying psychic powers and miracles has a powerful attraction and can easily lead away from the path. Put bluntly, if such powers produced actual results, there would be no need for those possessing them to earn a living. Simply by performing one of their miracles, they would have food to eat every day without lifting a finger. With miraculous abilities, a monk would be able to conjure up halls, shrines, and temples without having to solicit contributions from householders. Clearly, such powers aren't real. The Buddha sometimes had to eat horse feed. He didn't satisfy his hunger by using supernatural powers. Through Buddhology, the noble ones, Aryas, are without even a speck of superstitious belief. Worldly people are ignorant and have ignorant desires. These two, avijja, ignorance, and tanha, craving, are what tether us to the stake of superstitious belief. The problem with superstition is that it creates foolish belief everywhere. It cannot elevate mind, which only happens following the arousing of Buddhology. Buddha means the one who knows, is awakened, and has fully blossomed. This is the best and most correct interpretation of Buddha. Contemplate these three characteristics: being one who truly knows, being awakened from the sleep of ignorance, and having blossomed into the highest freedom. You won't find even the slightest trace of superstitious belief there. This is how Buddhists should be, not a superstitious crowd. Though the world is full of superstitious belief, we aren't narcotized by sleepology. When Sayasatra slowly fades out and Buddhasastra takes its place, one gradually wakes up and opens one's eyes to a wakeful world, which represents the advancement of the human mind. Otherwise, mind stays asleep without any advancement at all. Buddhology differs from sleepology in that it depends on wisdom. Starting with the first bits of real knowledge, Buddhology makes use of Dhamma knowledge and develops into wisdom. It doesn't depend on untested belief like superstition does. Buddhology questions and examines. Its belief, when it comes, depends on direct spiritual experience. Such belief is backed by knowledge of causes and conditions, which constitutes right understanding, samaditthi, and leaves the foolish beliefs and wrong understanding, miccha-ditthi, of superstition behind. Why do people accept superstition so easily? Both Buddhology and sleepology involve faith. The faith of Buddhasastra is consonant with wisdom, while the faith of Sayasastra believes foolishly and blindly. Now let's consider the question of why humans fall for superstition so easily. There are deep, hidden causes and conditions we need to consider in suitable detail to understand. The first condition to consider is that superstition easily cooperates with unknowing instinctual responses. It fits well with congenial ignorance, in that, at birth, one can have no knowledge of liberation from mind's problems. Hence, at the start of its life, any child will be primed for the fall into superstitious belief. The second condition is that superstition fits easily with our instinctual inclination to let others do things for us. Children have someone to help them at all times, and with instincts still guided by ignorance, they lack the knowledge to help themselves. They only understand how to rely on others, which suits the growth of superstition very well. It's superstition that always turns us to other people, sacred things, or mysterious forces for help. Of course, it's natural and ordinary that we're born needing help, and this makes us ripe for superstition. This is as it must be and shouldn't be taken as harmful. Once we're born, we meet things that suit us, including superstitions. Hence, we continually gather superstitious knowledge, belief, and clinging. The people close to us surround us with such superstitions, especially the words and language meant to awe children into doing this and not doing that. The third condition is that a superstition requires less of an investment. A superstition is a less tiring and much simpler proposition than finding out something for oneself. Superstitious rituals require little input or effort. The offerings at shrines usually cost much less than what people want in return. Participating in superstition is less wearisome because it's so easy to do. Chanting an incantation of just a few lines is a tiny investment, yet vast riches or flocks of sexual partners are expected. Children thus pick up many prayers and formulas easily, rather than putting in the time and effort required for real learning. The fourth condition is that superstition is appropriate for people of weak intelligence who don't know things as they really are. This kind of weak intelligence isn't a birth or a brain defect. Most people are weak in wisdom because they don't understand things properly and don't strive to do so. Whether from East or West, whatever the nationality, most people exercise intelligence weakly, which makes them susceptible to superstition. Buddhology, given its profundity, requires great application just to get through the front door. Many people tend toward taking the easy way, and so they seize upon superstition greedily or their already weak understanding. The fifth condition is that superstition enjoys the great advantage of questioning being forbidden. When something is raised up to a sacred status, questioning or critiquing it isn't allowed. For example, I know an instance of a child who asked how a wooden image of a god can help us when it can't move its arms, and the child was spanked for his impertinence. Buddhology lacks this advantage because it allows questioning based in mindfulness and clear understanding. With superstition, there is an unquestioning acceptance that if something is sacrosanct, then it is properly a mystery for ordinary worldly people. With questions and criticism not allowed, superstitions become more mysterious and sacred, and something that can't be understood at all becomes the most sacred or holy. Superstition always has this advantage. The sixth condition is the adaptable, chameleon-like quality of superstition. In Thailand, the statues of gods are blessed in various ways. The same kind of blessings are also applied to taxis, trucks, and even warships. For the statue to be efficacious, someone must bless it. Where does this power come from? These practices are always changing, impossible to pin down, and endlessly adaptable to the needs of foolishness. Wrapped in blind belief, people flit back and forth between one illusion and the other without recognizing what they are doing. Because of this slipperyness, sleepology becomes ever more firmly entrenched. Sleepology is thoroughly mixed in with religion. In discussing Sayasatra like this, my purpose is to clarify human understanding. Merely criticizing or acting superior gets us nowhere. Rather, we aim to elucidate a strong tendency that obstructs genuine practice of Buddhism. This is especially true of the seventh condition for sleepology's robustness. It is extremely sticky and able to take over a lot of space in human minds, such that there is a mingling together of superstition and genuine religion, rather like two rivers coming together with a larger channel dominating. Mixed up in the minds of the masses, sleepology dominates and problems ensue, which creates opportunities for scoundrels and criminals. Their exploitation of superstition gives them the advantage. Their unprincipled superstitious practices give them courage to promote evil, even the cruelest activities. That Buddhism is mixed up with superstition is an uncomfortable truth. The seeds of sleepology are planted in a child's mind soon after birth. Sayasatra develops into a thriving plant, and later on, if and when Buddhology is encountered, it inevitably gets mixed up with that superstition. Hence, Buddhology doesn't weaken superstition immediately. Rather, there occurs a mixing together of the two. In the two rivers analogy, one river is clean and pure, one is cloudy and murky. On meeting together, they mix in such a way that the clean and pure is sullied. In the same way, the human mind is comfortable mixing up Buddhology and sleepology. If we look at the history of religions coming to Thailand, superstition came first, arriving from India in the forms of Brahmanic creed. Buddhism came afterward, and so the roots of the Buddha's teaching aren't so deeply planted as those of sleepology. Around the ancient town of Chaya, where I lived all my life, a little investigation reveals that Brahmanic shrines were in front of all the old Buddhist temples. If they hadn't been pulled down, we would see them all over. Ancient temples over 1,000 years ago had in front of them Brahmanic shrines that were Narayana, Shiva, or other deities that were worshipped. This indicates that people then followed both Buddhism and Brahmanism at the same time. The authorities of a place wouldn't say anything against this. They allowed such beliefs and practices because they gave people psychological support and promoted communal harmony and cooperation. Sometimes the Brahmanic shrine is found within the main Buddhist shrine. When the big central Chedi stupa at our local Wakayal was excavated, they found a representation of Shiva and an image of Ganesha in the main chamber among the Buddha images. They were all worshipped together. Today we are still accustomed to worshipping a mixture of Buddhism and Brahmanism. People prostrate to images of both the Buddha and Brahmanic gods. This shows how Buddhists follow a form of their religion mixed up with Brahmanism. The word sacred has many meanings and perspectives. The sacredness of Dhamma is of one kind, the sacredness of God is of another. This theistic sacredness is easier for children to understand. They can understand the sacredness of Dhamma. They can recite the Pali words for honoring the Buddha 1,000 times without understanding what the Buddha is. However, the sacredness of Lords Indra and Brahma is immediately believed in and accepted into their hearts. This reveals the injustice of sacredness. It's so flexible that anyone can make of it what they like. Consequently, we have many versions of the sacred. The kinds that children can understand have an advantage, and all the beliefs easily understood by children are Sayasatra. Consequently, they deeply pervade our religion and understanding of the sacred. Further, all human beings have ways of thinking and imagining that create personal ideologies according to their tastes. All of us can observe in ourselves how we want our own personal system that is unique. I call these personal creeds. Not carefully or wisely worked out, they are naturally mixed bags. We collect this, that, and the other according to what we wish to believe and what pleases us. Unless properly guided by Dhamma, our choices are hit or miss. We follow our foolish preferences and accumulate hodgepodges that we are likely to cling to until we die. Unless there is realization of nobility through path, fruit, and nibbana, our personal creeds inject sleepology into whatever mixed bag Buddhism we profess. These easily end up as confused jumbles of ideologies lacking self-awareness. Thus we end up with a false, adulterated creed. Call it 1,000 ways, like we do with the food we eat. We eat Thai, Chinese, Vietnamese, Indian, Middle Eastern, Italian, French, and more. Many kitchens and homes are a cultural smorgasbord. That is what people like. Lots of variety to entertain their preferences. Psycho-spiritual creeds are pretty much the same. We pick up all sorts of interesting, pleasing bits and pieces from all over the world. This creates a false, adulterated creed of 1,000 ways, because it doesn't go with genuine wisdom. Viewed from this perspective, it's disappointing, even depressing, that most Buddhists still hold beliefs so mixed up that we don't know what's what. For example, we accept the gods of other religions and mix them up with the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Think of how our traditional water-pouring ritual for sharing merit arose and how it has become mixed up. Today's ceremony didn't exist at the time of the Buddha. Although it probably didn't happen immediately, as time went on, the rituals and ceremonies were adulterated. Non-Buddhist elements were included. Reciting the virtues of the Buddha, for instance, became a superstitious petitioning. To sum up, we follow an adulterated, polluted religion so that, as the saying goes, we don't know what is gold, what is copper, or what is brass. We mix many things together and take it as ours. Consequently, we don't get the true benefit from the best thing of all. To continue with the analogy, when we mix gold with copper, brass, and tin, we devalue the gold, and we can't make the most of it. So it is with the very best of things, with Dhamma. Attempting to separate the gold from the base metals so that what remains is good, true, and genuine would bring us much more benefit. When the general situation involves all these admixtures, we can follow the principle of avoiding mixtures whenever that is best. At times we will have to accept some of the mixtures when that turns out to be necessary. We will follow what is most beneficial. We find admixtures in all our Buddhist temples and shrines, including rituals that aren't really Buddhist. Even the Buddha images turn out to be mixtures when we examine them carefully. For example, people go to great lengths to dress the images with fine cloth. Is this necessary for images made of metal or stone? If people think the Buddha will be cold, that is superstitious logic. People make offerings to Buddha images just like they make to spirits they want to appease. Others believe that the images are alive with the spirit. Some ask for fertility from them, which is quite a stretch given that the Buddha was celibate. I once met someone who believed her child was fathered by the image. With such things happening with Buddha images, how can anyone say that there is no adulteration? So let's look around carefully and learn to distinguish what is Buddhology, leading to awakening, and what is sleepology, keeping us sleepwalking. Let us establish ceremonies that wake us up. Rather than attacking the superstitions, all we have to do is leave the incoherent sleepology alone and it will fade away. We need only to keep what is correct and genuine, so don't sloppily go along with whatever is easiest or just follow your friends. Use discrimination. I'll stop there. He does go on to explain a few. Actually, I'll read the bit of conclusion out of this chapter. To sum up, Chitta Bhavana can occur in Buddhist forms and in superstitious forms. Either approach can foster mental fortitude, courage, and progress. Which form our Buddhism takes depends on our choices and actions. It's up to us to cultivate mind, to train it, guide it, improve it, and make it thrive in the right way. The more we know about proper Buddhist mental cultivation, the more we will be able to do the job properly. Hence, sincere Buddhists need to take responsibility in this. Don't be indifferent or follow the crowd. We collectively need to make adjustments to improve ourselves, our homes, and our Buddhism to be the real thing. Don't fall for superstition and waste the opportunity of a human birth that has encountered the Buddha's teachings. Don't confuse superstitious beliefs with Dhamma truths. Let's be properly Buddhist so the story of suffering can end. There's a few other parts just about looking in more into dependent arising. He goes into about finding out sussing out what's superstition and what's Dhamma, and educating ourselves on that, and then eventually abandoning the lower path, I suppose. I guess. Yeah, I know for me, kind of coming across that, it's kind of like, it can be, it's an interesting topic for him to bring up, because it is very much, when we look at our actions, and I'll even, in my own actions, or even more so when I was growing up, it's like some things we do just don't make sense. Like, why do I keep doing that? It's just, why am I so invested in, why do I think that this little, whether it be some form of a ritual or some form of a habit or something is going to bear great fruit. And in a way it is a path, because we can do it and keep doing it, and it does have an effect, but it always falls short. And I think it's just interesting to see the differences. If anyone wants to make any comments or questions, you'd be welcome.
Does he only criticize Thai culture or other Buddhist traditions, like getting into Tibetan Buddhism or Mahayana or different beliefs of Buddhism?
Yeah, I think he's mainly concerned with the Thai Buddhism. Like Ajahn Buddhadasa was a bit of like a Thai Buddhist reformer kind of, so he focuses a lot on that. And kind of the translator of this, he like encourages us to look at our own cultures too. Like, say we don't have the whole water pouring thing. You can see when the Thais come, they get that's definitely a part of their culture. But we have, some of the things that he talks about are things we have, like, or are more like human things, and then some are more specific. But he doesn't, go into. But I think as the Buddhism goes to all the countries, like you said, like we're brought up with the cultural superstitions, and that mixes. So the flavor of all the Buddhism in every country, if we've seen it, is slightly different. In maybe it's probably not all superstition that caused that, but it's just within the roots of the culture superstitions, like kind of mixed. It so seems.
Right. Thank you.